Jill Morales.
Jill Morosky here.
Ken Livingston.
Okay, so we don't have Ken
Paul
yet.
Hogan.
Paul is here.
Ryan Nobrega.
Here.
And Sandy Fry.
Here. All right. So we can get started. Let's skip the minutes at this point. Okay. So I'm going to skip over the minutes. That was our first item on the agenda to get to our first, to the next item, which was to have a tribute to Mary Ellen Thibodeau, who passed away on November 25th. And I think most of you know that Mary Ellen was the first chair of this board, but she was also an amazing person who biked and walked most places that she went. When she had downtown Hartford meetings, sometimes she walked there, sometimes she biked there, sometimes she walked and used transit. So she really knew what was going on with the infrastructure and what was needed. So she actually was the one who identified the problem with crosswalks and sidewalks at the corner of Mountain, Fern, and Hunter. And that project is actually halfway implemented now. They'll finish it in the spring. There are going to be new crosswalks, new sidewalks, and new pedestrian signals over there. Probably the thing, though, that most people know Mary Ellen for now is her real passion and being the driving force behind traffic calming for North Main Street. She did a lot of things within the commission and a lot of things outside the commission, convening neighborhood meetings, going door to door in the neighborhood. She created a postcard that they took out. She did a lot of walks of the corridor with elected officials, which have been really successful. And she really kept it moving. And I think that there are many people who are even more motivated now to make sure that that Main Street project goes forward. So Mary Ellen really made a difference. But I think for many of us who served on the commission with Mary Ellen, there was more than just her passion about biking and walking things. I think that probably most of us were touched by her kindness and her real sincere interest in getting to know new people. So we were really lucky to have her as a part of our board for the number of years that we did. And I just felt it was important that we say something in honor of all that she'd done. And if anybody else has anything that they'd like to add, please do. Jill, yeah, you're on mute.
Jill Morosky. I did not know Mary Ellen well, but I knew much of what she did. And I think I think everything you said is true, but I'm not sure we would be here in this meeting today if it weren't for some of the intelligence and persistence of her work, advocating for cycling and pedestrian work. And I was wondering if sometime we might think about a way to remember her in terms of perhaps a benefit ride or walk or some memorial, because she really was a first and really important force. And I say this not as her friend. I didn't know her really well, but just observing what she accomplished at the state level and at the local level.
A nice idea.
So this is Daniel Johnson. Rick, I'm really sorry for Mary Ellen's passing. Myself, new to roles in town, within the town and with the community, I think Mary Ellen was someone that was just a great leader. She cast a huge shadow, but that didn't mean she was ever out of touch with me or anyone that she met. I think of the commission and what this group has done, and most of that foundation was built by Mary Ellen and then a few other members, including Scott and Sandy. And as again, new to someone within town council or any public committee, she taught a lot. She was open to give advice. I've been in your home at North Main Street meetings, and she always listened. She always gave real genuine feedback. And hearing of her passing was just someone that someone really well, who stands at a level as a leader and an icon within a specific group that I didn't feel like I gave enough to Mary Ellen as a person, and she was incredible. And I just she set a lot for my mindset within the commission, but just as a person as whole, and dealing with very important items that affect everyone. And I can't thank you enough for letting me get to know her and for her being the person she was. So thank you.
This is Ethan Frankel. Do I have a moment to say something?
Yes, do.
So on behalf of Tracy and I, we want to just remember how much she impressed upon us through the bicycle stuff and other things we've done with her volunteering, that one person can really make a difference. And I think that's, just in short, the most important thing we wanted to share. And just to interject sort of what would be at the end of the meeting is that, on behalf of Bike West Hartford, I would like to try to do something solid and lasting as a memorial, like, for instance, perhaps talk to ASD, to the School for the Deaf, which their house backed up to those grounds, and they worked with them for Main Street, and I'd love to see something like a memorial bench, if that's something that's possible. I'd like to look into that. And we're also talking about a ride in the spring, but more permanently, I'd like to talk about something like a bench, perhaps like a bus stop bench or something like that.
Can I interject here for a moment? This is Dan Firestone. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah. That's not, well, I met her several years ago. I was in town hall and walked by this room, and this woman with a bicycle helmet on the table was talking to the mayor. And so I stuck my head in, and they were talking about a bicycle commission. And let's not forget that Bike Walk Connecticut had a Discover West Hartford ride a couple of years back, and she and Rick were chaired that and were instrumental in bringing Bike Walk Connecticut to town.
Mary Ellen was the first executive director of Bike Walk Connecticut, and really helped to launch and move that group forward.
Sandy?
Yeah.
Hi, this is Amir. And
Hi, Amir.
just sitting here, I can just imagine Mary Ellen just sitting in a seat and making those insightful comments. She was so full of energy and so full of life. And so passionate about what she did. that we're really going to miss her, and we can't replace her.
I told Rick that I would release him, so he didn't have to sit through the whole meeting. And I apologize, we're always a little awkward starting these online meetings. But
Sandy, can I just make a couple comments?
yeah.
Yeah. So I thank all of you who did make comments. So I have almost been married 50 years to Mary Ellen. It would have been 50 years this coming February. And so back in 2006, Mary Ellen and I, as I'm sure some of you know, we rode our bikes across the country and for our 35th anniversary, and also for her 5th year being cancer-free, because she was diagnosed in 2001. So 5-year mark was a big one. And she was a lawyer, corporate lawyer for Aetna and ING at the time. And I remember vividly when we finished that ride, it changed her. I mean, because we weren't cyclists. I think the furthest we'd ever gone before we rode across the country is a one-day overnight trip, and we both had sore butts for the next week. So that was, quite the adventure for us. And she retired 2 years after we finished that bike trip, and all of a sudden I realized she had become an activist in a number of different ways. Biking and walking related matters were clearly her first endeavor, and you guys have summed up very, very well, the things that were important to her. She also got involved with politics, and so we've had every politician in town in our house. My garage used to be filled with car parts that she would pick up off the sidewalk from North Main Street, and so I just sort of got out of her way when she was focused and on a mission, and so North Main Street, making that safe with a road diet is kind of important. And as I think everybody knows who travels on that road, it's the road diet concept. I get up to, I hear things from Sandy. She keeps me up to date. And so hopefully Mary Ellen's vision on North Main Street will become a reality sometime next summer or early fall. But I know, she's known all of you in one way or another for a good while, and always enjoyed working with every one of you, and respected your input. So I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to let you go at it.
Okay. Thanks. It feels awkward to have a regular meeting now.
Yeah.
Like everything seems mundane.
Well, have a good meeting. Don't
Thank
waste
you,
your
Rick.
Thank you,
time.
Rick.
Okay. Daniel, you can add Ken Livingston. I just saw he joined.
Sorry.
Okay. So I think we have our entire board. This is the first time in a long time. And Dwayne and Matt, I hope you had gotten the WebEx invitation, because when I didn't see you at first, I was a little nervous that maybe something had fallen through on that. But I'm glad to see you here. So the first item on the agenda now is to approve the minutes of our last meeting. And those are, if you have the meeting packet, they're right behind the agenda. Does anybody have any comments on those? Does somebody want to move to adopt? the minutes?
I'll move to adopt the minutes, Ken Livingston.
Okay, second.
I will second.
I second.
Colin Gillespie.
Okay, Jill beat whoever to it. Okay.
Good enough.
Okay. I think we're supposed to do a roll call vote on anything, Daniel. That seems silly. Is anybody going to yell at us if we don't do that? I'm looking at Matt.
Hey, this is Matt.
I'll keep it per tradition, so I'll do a quick roll call. Just,
do we need to do that, Matt? Nod your head if we need to. We don't need to. Matt says we don't need to.
What you can do as the chair, Sandy, or whoever's running the meeting, is just say, I move to approve, or I move to adopt such and such. Are there any objections? Hearing none, it's approved, it's adopted.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Right. Forget Ken and Jill's actions. I move that we approve the minutes as they were sent out. Are there any objections? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item. So, first item on our agenda is to talk about next steps with the bike ped plan and really talk about an exciting proposal that the town gave to Denise, Ken, and I when we met with them. And I think there might have been some semantics issues then as I sent this out. But what the idea was from the town, they said, we'd like you to help us come up with a grid of streets that would have like buffered bike lanes on them or that kind of facility or better. Not just a simple bike lane, but an improved facility. And as we talked about it, I said, oh, that's what you call a low stress bike facility. So let's look at creating a grid of a low stress bike facility. And the engineering department, Greg Summer, had put together an analysis of the stress level on all the streets in town. And I had sent that out also. And in that send, it seemed like it got confused because it seemed like maybe we were saying, let's find all the low stress roads that exist today and say that's where bicycles should be. But really the idea is to try to identify a grid. Maybe it's 3 north-south streets and 3 east-west streets. And those are going to have really high level facilities on them. And then we'll have other things that tie into them, maybe bike lanes, maybe just streets that have low traffic volumes, low speeds, and we'll create a really effective bicycle network. But the first step is to identify, if we're thinking about how do people get around town on bicycles, how would we like to see them get around town? What would be the roadways? Let's just start with identifying what might be the north-south roadways that we would say would be important. Anybody want to throw some things out?
Steel Road?
What was that? Steel Road.
Well, that's not I would say Mountain and Main would be also.
I would definitely say Mountain because that's one of the main roads that are used now by bicyclists trying to get north-south. Mm-hmm. Because the other alternatives are so poor. You can't go up north and you can't go up Troutbrook. So a lot of people gravitate toward Mountain. But a bumper, that is amazing news because a bumper bike lane is like the holy grail of bike lanes. I mean, oh my God.
Yeah. I think Matt Hart, town manager, wanted to add something.
Oh, thank you, Sandy, and good evening, everyone. It's good to see you online. Just to elaborate, Sandy, on your opening comments, and if I could describe it a little bit as almost from a layperson's perspective, how could we create a good, concentrated system of buffered bike lanes that really would make good practical sense for the commuting cyclist? So not just for recreational cycling, understand that that's important, but someone looking to commute to work, someone looking to commute to the grocery store, what have you. and how do we try to extend those across town? So, maybe 3 or 4 north-south, another 3 or 4 east-west. And if that's too ambitious, so be it. But how could we do that and have those connections, continue through the town, and maybe even with an eye for regional connections as well? Like, how do we get to Yukon Health Center? How do we get to Cigna in Bloomfield? So just thinking of it along those lines. I just want to add those thoughts to your good opening remarks.
Thank you. That's helpful. Yeah.
This is Ken Livingston. I mean, I would, given what Matt said, and while Mountain is used by the recreational cyclists and others, I mean, if we're talking connections, think of it, even if you were driving a car, the primary, it's Main Street. You may even use Quaker as one that goes almost the length of the town, north-south. Those are two primary ones. Mountain, you can connect to like Woodruff and continue potentially on. But I think if we're going to start with aspirationals, it's Main Street, Quaker's another one. I mean, you could almost talk to some extent Trout Brook. Trout Brook's obviously going to have a trail, so that may be excluded, but that would be another north-south connection, but potentially closely spaced North Main or Main that it's not needed. But I look at ones purely from creating the best connection, and maybe we find out they're not the most feasible, but let's start with aspirationally the best, most connected ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with using Quaker. I mean, I'm biased. I live right off of Farmington and Quaker, but I think it traverses the town pretty well. It can take you all the way to New Britain Ave. So, Mountain, I mean, I live on that edge of town, so I don't use Mountain. But I thought it ended at like Sedgwick or something.
Since we're talking aspirational, any commuter has to go down Farmington Ave. That's where Yukon Health Center is located, the stores. And Farmington Ave actually does have the space if you get rid of the islands and use the space that the islands take up for a bicycle lane. And that would be fabulous. It would not impinge on the traffic because the islands already do. But it's expensive to tear up that road with the islands. They spend a whole lot of money putting them in. But that would be a dream because it would connect Hartford to Farmington right through West Hartford. And there's so many businesses along that route.
Hi, Sandy. Hi, Sandy. This is Alan Blazenstein.
Yep.
So I'll give the perspective. As you know, I commuted for many, many years into Hartford, but I also ride a lot to get places. So I do a lot of the north-south also. So I'm of two minds. I was going to say if you could make anything the way you wanted and it was totally feasible, I would say Mountain Road is definitely a key one on this end of town. The reason being that there's no north-south route to the west of here, of Mountain Road. And I'm biased. I live a little bit off there, but also, it connects all the way up into, Bloomfield, Simsbury. And you could basically, yes, it ends at Sedgwick, but just zigzag over to Ridgewood. And then that takes you all the way down to the whole area. And yes, you could pick Quaker Lane. You could pick Prospect, any of those streets for another north-south route or Main Street. I was just going to throw out an idea, and I know this may complicate things a little bit. I mean, it's got to be extremely difficult. I mean, Mountain Road is not really wide enough to put on in a good bike lane right now. The one we have is just a sliver. I mean, I wonder if you sit down and look at the map, could we string together streets to make a route out of streets that are residential streets that would require relatively little modification, or maybe we could put some traffic calming into those streets as well, which would also help the people who live on the streets. I mean, that's another possibility, but I was going to say, just from a geographically simple solution, I would say like picking some of the main streets like Mountain Road, Fern Street, Fern East-West, or Asylum, any of those streets would be great candidates. And probably something, I don't know about the southern end of town where you would have, there's not really anything other than New Britain Avenue. If you could make New Britain Avenue bikeable, that would be incredible. But
Well, we don't want to limit ourselves now. We want to start with what we think is the real aspiration, and then we can limit ourselves later. But Alan, you said that you could maybe string together streets to replace mountains. Since you ride a lot over there, are there streets that you use in that way?
Well, so that I do sort of, and I mean, I'm not suggesting that we should definitely do that. Maybe we could, maybe there are some connections. I mean, we have a lot of little dead end streets and things like that could potentially be used for connectors and stuff. I guess I was just saying that, for example, somebody mentioned Steel Road. I mean, Steel Road only covers a small section of town, but if you continued south on some of the roads that connect right up there to Fern, you can continue past Fern, you can continue past Farmington. So that might be a way to get a north-south route. And it would seem to me that if you did traffic calming on some streets like that, you would also give benefit to the residents on the street, make it bikeable for their kids, and at the same time, you would have a route that cyclists could take and maybe wouldn't cost as much. I don't know. I was just saying that's one possible. I mean, I'm not saying do everything that way, but I'm saying seems like one possible approach to get some routes through town.
Jill, you wanted to add something. Jill, I want Jill to go ahead now.
Oh, I great respect for Alan, but I also live near where Alan lives, and there are no alternative sideways on Mountain. Mountain is also actually an alternative route to Cigna, because you can go down Mountain, hang a left on Still or on 185, right, I'm sorry, on Still or 185 and get yourself right into Cigna. So the easiest way to get to Cigna, and I have a question for Matt, the easiest way to get to Cigna, and I'm just applaud you're thinking about the health center and Cigna, and also think about the reservoir, which would be on the way to the health center. That isn't North Main a state road? What happens when we are mapping roads that become state roads, like Farmington?
So I'll ask Dwayne, Matt Hart here again. I'll ask, thank you for the question, Joe. I'll ask Dwayne to add to my comments, but we would need cooperation and approval from the state. For example, we have been talking, are there potential options for even a separated lane along sections of New Britain Avenue? So it would require their support and their assistance. And Dwayne can talk about, which office would be involved, and I think they would be looking for funding from the town, et cetera.
Oh, I thought we'd be looking for funding from them, but
we would.
Okay, because New Britain is another, I think, important road that catches that far end of town.
Dwayne, do you want to add to my explanation there?
Sure, Matt. It's Dwayne Martin, West Hartford Town Engineer. Obviously, I think the goal here is just to be in a planning mode. So we don't want to disclude challenging roadways just because we don't think it would happen. And when opportunities arise, when we meet with the state or other agencies to discuss options, I think we need to keep them on the table. So we just keep our options open, basically, like Sandy said. But as far as funding, that's always a challenging part when it comes to the state, especially in some of the roads. But we would work with the DOT if we wanted to initiate a project with the district office and discuss options with them. But usually they'll notify us of paving programs. The state has new policies now on this. They're not necessarily creating buffered bike lanes, but they're looking at narrowing their travel lanes, which sometimes provides a wider shoulder. But I don't think that they're to the point yet where they're marked bike lanes. Unfortunately, even if the shoulder was wide to do so.
If we're talking buffered bike lanes, there's no point in putting one on a quiet street. You want them on the busy streets to protect the bicyclists. That's where they serve a purpose. On a quiet street, they really don't do anything.
Right. On a quiet street, you probably just need to have signage to help people navigate because you don't need anything. But I thought I might have seen that Ryan was trying to make a comment before. Ryan, were you?
I was going to say, going north-south on the east side of town, I think Mountain Road into Ridgewood Road all the way down into, where it meets New Britain.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like a very long stretch north-south. I'm not sure when, how long the Trout Brook Trail will be completed, but that basically gets you north-south from New Park all the way to Asylum on a nice off-road, paved, kind of separated bike path. And then from there, maybe you could extend from Asylum up through King Philip. That gets you an entire north-south stretch through the center of town.
And
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, this is David Bickman. I'm not a member. Is this a time for comment or not?
Yeah, sure. We're looking for comments.
Okay. If I were doing this, I would regard, and I understand your suggestion. Look, this is aspirational. It's not whether it can be done or not. It's what makes most sense for getting people around on bikes. I think the north-south corridors, we all understand. It's Mountain Road. The next one over is Maine. The next one over is Trout Brook. The next one over is Quaker. It gets you all the way down to New Britain Avenue, and then Prospect Avenue. It gets all the way down to New Britain Avenue also. And then the north east-west one, of course, is Albany Avenue, then Farmington Park, and then New Britain Avenue. Excuse me, those are the kind of the nine major. Now I could have missed one or two. Nine major feeder roads that go right through town and connect us to all kinds of other towns. So that's my comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was going to raise Albany Avenue because I had that on my list too, that if we're being aspirational and, the easier east-west are south of Albany. But that really gives you regional connectivity.
And sorry, this is Daniel Johnson. So a couple of questions, Dwayne and Matt, and apologize I missed the meeting. I had a town council meeting from work on my calendar for the past few months, and I assumed it was one of those meetings. So I scheduled another meeting to overlap. So my apologies on that. But I like the stress level that you guys have has Farmington Avenue, and I see how the formula is based on lane width and curb space. Does it look at whether or not there's an island in the middle of the road, and is the removal of islands, an option on the table for some of these north-south routes? And also, if we can remove the islands and we're doing buffered bike lanes, what are the plans for, enforcing down the road? Because we can build the system and the bike network, but Mountain Road is, any road that has protected bike lane that is not used properly by motor vehicles or parking, kind of just wipes clean all the efforts and funding that went into that bike lane.
I actually, Matt, were you going to answer?
Yeah, I can start and ask Dwayne to add in. So thanks for your series of good questions there, Daniel. My thoughts on it.
Sure.
Again, we're talking about planning right now and updating the plan, and I do think we can be aspirational, and I would put a lot of things on the table as part of that exercise, including the potential removal of medians and that sort of thing that we've constructed over the years, understanding that we've made an investment in that, but times and needs of the community change. So I'm certainly open to looking at it, at least at this stage in the process. I don't know how, though, the removal of those traffic islands might impact the scoring under the plan. I would need to defer to Dwayne on that.
I just want to add, I think Farmington Avenue would be excellent. I just recently moved, and I now live directly on Farmington Avenue, and obviously working from home with COVID, I'm looking out my window at Farmington Avenue all day, every day, and I'm shocked at the number of bicyclists that go by every day on Farmington Avenue all day long. So it's definitely a road that's very heavily used. in my opinion, in town, even today in the winter. And I think it would be, ideal to have some kind of buffered bike lane on there if possible.
Dwayne, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I'll respond. Thanks, Sandy. Dwayne Martin, West Hartford Town Engineer again. Specifically to your question, Daniel, regarding how the stress levels were calculated, I'm not really sure. I'd have to defer to Greg Summer, but my guess is that the width of the lane or the width of the road obviously factors in. And I know that when he did the calculations, it's been a while, but I want to say that the medians on Farmington Ave were there at the time and the bump outs. So it should have factored in, but I'd have to verify with him on that. Regarding the removal of medians or bump outs around the town, those were put in at a different time. I don't think that complete streets were necessarily a focus as they are now, but they were done with good intentions. There were speeding and pedestrian concerns, and that's why they went in there. As most of you know, change is sometimes challenging for some. There are some people that love the bump outs and the medians and others that don't. And if they're going to be removed, there's definitely going to be people that are upset. But that's not to say that the town shouldn't be looking at possibly making those types of changes.
And I'm going to jump in on the enforcement of parking in bike lanes. I saw Matt put a note that the police would need to enforce the restrictions, and through the assistance of Dwayne, I got in touch with Lieutenant Peter Judah, who is the one who can answer questions about enforcement. And what he said is, yeah, they'll enforce parking in the bike lanes, but they're not really seeing it. And so that when anybody sees parking in a bike lane and wants to report that, you should do that, and they will address it. But he said he just wasn't aware of it being a problem. And it's not something that, if you think of all the jobs that the police have and what they're out on the street doing, seeing somebody parked in a bike lane, maybe they'll pick that up, but they're not going to be out doing patrols looking for parking in bike lanes. So there's a little bit of an onus on us if we're seeing a problem to report it, and then they'll have a closer focus. But I think the conversation was worthwhile because he said, "Oh, we'll keep a closer eye on this now. We're aware. We'll keep that sort of on the things that we look at." So that was the answer on that.
Thanks, Sandy, and thanks, Matt and Dwayne. I think it's, when I looked at like high stress level, there's the factors of lane width, traffic speed, and both those combined make it more dangerous for a bicyclist or pedestrian. Because again, I'm more on the pedestrian side for safe. I live on South Quaker, so walk that pretty much every day or run. And if we're building protected bike lanes, we're trying to lower a stress level. I think one of that would be if you're trying to get a 5 down to a 3 or a 4 down to a 2, part of that has to be the enforcement of what has been done to improve the environment for pedestrian and cyclists. So I just want to make sure that's equal consideration. Is if we're going to do this and it's aspirational, the aspirational also needs to address there may be real motorist motorist actions that negatively affect what we've tried to do and invested in as an improvement.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Are there any more thoughts? Let me just read down my list of the streets that we've talked about at this point. We talked about north-south streets, Mountain to Ridgewood, Maine, potentially Maine to Mayflower, so not Maine all the way south, Trout Brook, and possibly a combination of Trout Brook with the trail, and Quaker and Prospect. That's in the north-south direction. In the east-west, we talked about Albany Avenue, Asylum, Fern, Farmington, Boulevard, Park, New Britain Avenue, and it was not really a north-south and not really an east-west. New Park is sort of an angle there. So I think, that's way more than a simple grid. And what might need to happen is we think a little deeper, like, it would really be hard to do something on this street. Like, it'd be hard to do something on Asylum, but we could do something on Fern, or vice versa. But what Matt had asked us was to give them some feedback. So what does the commission think? Do you want to sort of take this list and think some more about it and then try to hone it at our next meeting? A little more?
Well, I mean, you could do it based on a rating with the team, with everyone on here through a document, and then come out with the top rated. Are we looking for a prioritized list?
Yeah, let's talk about, Colin, what would we use as rating criteria? I think that would be really useful to talk about.
Oh, that's true too. Yeah, so there's the methodology, which is that we do our own 1 through 6 of preferred, and or 1 through 5 or whatever the grading is, so that then afterwards we can have a vote, but that's voted based on our weighted needs, right? But then you're talking about the criteria. I guess when you do something like this, you think about feasibility. You think about impact. I don't know if those are too ambiguous for folks, but feasibility is something around, cost of change. Would it require too much to do it? And then impact would be, it's gonna be the most convenient, the best solution. Other people want to chime in on what you would do to decide which one of these were prioritized?
Yeah, I was thinking a similar thing, but maybe just like, because I think the original ask was like, 3 in each, 3 north, south, 3 east, west. If like everyone, like a quick poll of like, what are your top 3, and look at the ones that have the most alleys basically, and each person's choice is individual based on those things. Like in terms of feasibility, I have no idea, but I know the top 3 that I think that I would want, and if we look at the most popular ones, that gives us a good idea of where the consensus is, right?
Yeah, I don't think we're expected to be talking feasibility or anything at this point. It's aspirational. If you're going to put some lines on a paper, where's our grid look like? And then we go from, that's Dwayne's job to further refine it and then maybe talk to us and say one's feasible or the pros and cons of it.
So feasibility was an example of a criteria. And so we either don't have criteria, which was just proposed, and just sort of go by touch, gut, feel, and we each vote on what we think, or we agree on what we'd be thinking in our prioritization. Feasibility can be thrown out, but then what's the other thing that we're grading that on? So if we're each going to decide on 3, what are the things we're grading them on in order to get to our 3? Or we just say, based on our different and diverse tastes, I like 1, 2, 4. Someone else likes 1, 2, 6. I mean, there's 2 ways to approach it.
I think, Jill, you were going to add something.
I like the idea of thinking about it in terms of different criteria, but I'm not very I'm not keen about an approval vote, a favorability vote. I mean, we're acting on behalf of 60,000 people, and our preferences should take second, third, or fourth place to figuring out where the usage is. What is the commuting to the health center? I know it's pretty robust because I see bikes going there. What is the commuting to Cigna? I think what is the use to the schools? I mean, how can we connect to a school? So, I mean, it's one thing to talk about what we would want, but I think we have to think about what the residents need, right? And that's a very different thing.
Paul, were you going to add something?
Jill, this is Alan. Jill, I actually have. That's a very, very good point. I would say here's a suggestion. Main Street is absolutely the commercial spine of the town. It connects all of the different commercial zones, pretty much. So that's one obvious one. And of course, Farmington, and if you want to look at other commercial zones, Albany and New Britain. Now, are those the places people want to commute? Maybe yes or maybe no, but those are certainly, if you want to go shopping at any of the stores or do anything useful in town, those things are major. I would say Farmington and Maine certainly should be on the first ones on the list because you can get people in and out of West Hartford Center and Elmwood and Bishop's Corner.
This is Ethan Frankel. Can I shoehorn in a comment? From Bike
Real quick, Ethan. Sorry. Could everyone make sure they
yes.
click mute if they're not talking? Because I don't know, there's a fishbowl that's leaking in the background, but it's really hard to hear.
I think the holy grail on this thing is Trout Brook and Farmington, and that's the starting point because Trout Brook is wide enough. There was already infrastructure started. It gets you way north and way south, and Farmington is the obvious central east-west route, and it gets you everywhere. And if you start there, you just find the routes to get you to Trout Brook, and also Trout Brook is flat, relatively flat, and Main Street isn't, and Mountain isn't. So the holy grail is Trout Brook and Farmington.
Thank you. Paul Hogan, it looked like you wanted to say something before.
I did. I have forgot what I was going to say, but I guess first of all, I just want to thank Dwayne and Mr. Hart. I kind of, Matt, appreciate the foreword to this whole conversation, and I guess I would probably echo Jill and kind of accessibility for 60,000+ people. Really looking at these load centers, school, shopping, work, leisure, healthcare, and making sure that we do have a robust and connected system. So although it's a bit early, in one way to look at some of the greater costs and implications, really, I think what we want to see is the right infrastructure being used for the right reasons. A lot of times living on Main Street, although we have bike lanes, I see more people biking on sidewalks than actual bike lanes. So just looking and making sure that it's being used kind of as intended and designed. And I think accessibility is a big part of that. So thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to push back a little bit on what Jill said in that we are the Bicycle and Pedestrian Commission for the town of West Hartford. And with that role, we're sort of charged with helping to advise the town. And we've all been selected because we have a particular interest in biking and or walking, and so have thought a little bit more about these issues than others. I think Paul's point was really good that if we're thinking about making this network, we ought to be thinking about accessibility. We're going to create sort of the backbone that gets people around town. So we want to select roads that would do that. But I think if we don't do it, who will? We don't have an opportunity to ask the 60,000 residents of West Hartford. We're really charged with trying to think on behalf of all those people and come up with recommendations. So as we've been talking, I've kind of liked the idea of we put together this list and everybody gives their top 3 east-west, their top 3 north-south, and probably a lot of what we're thinking about is accessibility. We live in different parts of the town, so we might have different thoughts on that, but I think that would be a worthwhile exercise. And then we look and see what we come out with, and then maybe we say, oh no, that doesn't represent it all. It's concentrated things in one place. But it might be a good place to start.
Now, just to interject, Sandy, I didn't mean to say we shouldn't be making decisions, but we shouldn't be making decisions on our preferences, but on the needs of the town. That's all. That's all I was trying to say.
Okay, I think we're saying the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So does that sound reasonable? And does that sound reasonable to the town if we were to do some of this work between meetings, and at our next meeting we would talk about what we're seeing amongst us is the top 3 east-west, the top 3 north-south.
Matt Hart, it certainly makes sense to me. We weren't expecting you to complete this exercise this evening. We just really wanted to introduce the idea and look for your feedback. So again, it's a planning process. Take the time you need and follow up with us. It can be iterative too. We may have comments on your initial proposals and ask questions, et cetera. This may take a little going back and forth.
Yeah, we may want to think about things like if we look at what we come out with and we think, oh, every one of these roads looks really, really hard. Maybe we should come up with a couple alternatives that should be easier too. So I can see us having some interesting and fun conversations on that. Does that seem reasonable to everybody? Any objections to going that way? All right, I like this new system of asking for objections. Okay. Who's that? Oh.
This is David Peters here. I was wondering if I could just add a couple comments.
Sure.
So I'm a Westford resident, for the record. I think this idea is fantastic. Thanks to Matt and Dwayne for bringing this to the commission. I think this is really where the town should be looking to go, especially with population trending younger. I think it was either Matt or Dwayne who said that maybe the needs of the town have changed. Jill, I understand your concern that maybe we shouldn't be speaking for the population, or the commission, shouldn't be speaking for the whole 60,000+ people. But yeah, I agree. We are the commission was elected to do that. I think we'll get maybe more information after the survey goes out, and maybe this could be added as a question on the survey. I don't know if that's an option, but maybe if people could, if they were presented with options, or if they could just write in, frequent routes that they use, whether in their car or otherwise, and maybe write what they would want the town to focus on for these north-south, east-west routes. But I like that it's just sort of like an aspirational thing, go, reach far. I think that's really good. I like the list of streets that were talked about. I think the only one I would add would be Oakwood. I think that's a good connector between Quaker and Prospect. So that would be the only road I would add. But I think this is a really great idea.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is roadway and trail projects. And the first thing I would like to talk about is the Trout Brook Trail. I had sent around to everyone, and in your packet are the trail designs that Dwayne's engineer, Julia Vera, did the design. It's great that the town can do these designs in-house. And so Dwayne had told me that before they take this out for public comment, they wanted to receive our input and make any adjustments that they might need to, and then they would take it out to the public. Dwayne, if you want to give some other introductory comments, please do.
Sure. Thank you, Sandy. Again, it's Dwayne Martin. So this is what we're calling Trout Brook Trail Phase 3. So this stretches from Park Road down to Jackson Avenue. It's intended to be a multi-use trail. It is off the road, and in order to make it off the road, we plan on narrowing Trout Brook Drive in that stretch to accommodate a 10-foot wide paved multi-use trail. There are 13 houses on the south end of that section where the trail would be located on their front yards. This is something that we looked at different options. Can we go in front and behind. The idea behind Trout Brook Trail was to keep it as close to the water course as possible. Although in this section, it's not really all that good looking of a water course compared to other sections right near the highway there. So, and the backyards were not a real easy option. So they ended up going into the front. So we were looking at doing this a while back. We did a concept plan. We met with these 13 property owners, received some feedback, but admittedly, it's been about 5 years. And in that time, we then obtained a grant. And so as Sandy mentioned, Julie Vera in my office picked up the design and is working on it. And so she got it to a preliminary design level. And once we receive feedback from you guys, we'll of course respond to that. But then the idea is we would go back to those, I think it's 13 property owners, and just get them back up to speed. There might be new property owners there as well, and get some feedback. One of the biggest, if not, I think there were two big comments we received last time. One was a concern about winter maintenance, because they don't have a sidewalk in front of their houses now, and the town is committed to plowing Trout Brook Trail. It may not be a primary plow route, but during a storm event, eventually would get plowed. And so we confirmed that with the property owners. That was one big comment that we addressed. The second is the width of the trail. They didn't like the idea of a 10-foot wide paved pathway in front of their houses. And so we said we would discuss that as the design goes forward. Right now, I think the plans that we sent over still show a 10-foot wide trail, so we'll see where that goes. As far as right-of-way goes, it doesn't impact them at all. We're not taking any property from them. There is a wide enough right-of-way. The entire stretch would be in the town's right-of-way of Trout Brook Drive, and there would not be any permits required. And so that would definitely expedite the design. So we're hoping to be in construction with this section this next construction season, so 2021. And still a little bit of design left, but essentially that's it in a nutshell.
Hi, this is Amir Tolchevsky. I have a question for the town people. Any coordination with the city of Hartford? Because the city of Hartford seems to be very active in terms of they paint a lot of bicycle paths on a lot of their new construction. Do we coordinate at all with adjoining towns when planning these routes?
Go ahead, Sandy.
I was going to say from the city of Hartford side, I'm the bicycle and pedestrian coordinator for the city of Hartford. So that makes for an easy coordination that I know what's happening on both sides. And a lot of coordination happens through the Capital Region Council of Governments also. I mean, we don't really have any logical connection right now to the Trout Brook Trail from Hartford.
I have a question for Dwayne. As I looked at the plans, there's clearly places where the houses are located, and you're going to be on essentially their front lawns. I understand they don't own that particular, it's right away. But then right now you cut out into the road and there's some arm cow. That's going to have to be moved back. The telephone poles are going to have to be moved back, I would assume. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, there's catch basins that need to be relocated, driveways that'll be modified. The curb line will be completely shifted in. There's utility poles that need to be relocated. There's a section of fence and guide rail that gets impacted. Yes.
I wasn't clear from the design. I was trying to figure out how we're going to get past that area.
Yeah, the plan set that we sent over was intended to be clean, if you will. It's not a construction plan set with a lot of detailed information on it. It was more information just to give you an idea of the length, the width, the approximate location. And if you guys wanted to ride down that area or drive or walk and just take a better look at it before we move forward.
Thank you.
This is Daniel Johnson. So I know where Trout Brook hits Park Road currently, there's no crosswalk on that side where the Trout Brook Trail would end. I know you did some new traffic lights and crosswalks there, but it's actually not on that one particular side of the intersection. Would that be included in designs?
Yes, yeah, it was intended to have, I want to say all 4 crosswalks there. I know we modified or replaced the traffic signal and included some buttons on that end, and the ramp was done. But yes, the idea is to have a connection there.
Okay. Because I know the bricks were built to kind of give you a better lean in around the turn right there, but it's kind of a hazard spot for pedestrians crossing.
Well, I'll certainly look into that. Thank you.
Maybe you can describe that, Dwayne. It looks to me like you have a truck apron at that intersection on the southwest corner. Is that what that is? It's sort of brick type.
Yeah, that's a stamped asphalt. So
Yeah.
essentially, when that intersection was being designed, the DOT required us to make sure that larger vehicles could make that turn. So if you're on Park Road and you want to turn right onto Tropper Drive and head down towards Quaker Lane South or eventually New Britain Ave, we had to have that widened quite a bit. But we didn't want cars and smaller vehicles to take advantage of that. We wanted them to take the turn slower. And so we created these smaller stamped asphalt areas to try and discourage the smaller vehicles from driving on those.
That would probably be interesting to do some observation to see if that is, in fact, if that surface treatment does deter the smaller vehicles.
My feedback would be the short time that I've been out there for various reasons, it's not really all that effective. And people see the raised granite curb, they know where the edge of the road is. So.
Yeah, that it needs to be maybe a little more like a truck ramp you would see on a roundabout that other people wouldn't drive up on.
Right.
Okay. Well, when you do this Trout Brook Trail, is DOT involved? Is it their funding? Whose funding is it?
It is not. DOT's not involved. It's a grant that we received that ended up getting placed with the DEP.
Okay. Maybe you can fix that as part of it.
Well, like I said, we'll look at it. We'll look at it. I'm pretty sure that the intent was there to have the 4 crosswalks, but we'll see what we can do.
Dwayne, this is Ken Livingston. Could you the cross section, is it, I'm just trying to figure out, at grade with the road, is it a step up, or how you separate it? Is there a vertical separation?
So the plan would be to take the existing granite curb that's out there on Tropper Drive and shift it into the road. And that's how we would narrow it. So the trail, the paved section, would be up above. So you'd have Tropper Drive, the roadway, which would pitch down toward the curb. The curb would be about a 6-inch reveal. And then that's the elevation of where the grass separating the curb from the trail would be. So the trail would be about 6 inches higher than the road itself.
Were there considerations? I'm not sure if I like the vertically separated, but from a cost and a design to just have it at grade with a more protected, with something separating it. You know, that's kind of. Did you consider either option, or I like the more vertically separated, but I just didn't know from a cost perspective and design, was it?
We did look at that. I think we had 2 or 3 options in the beginning, and we talked about having the trail actually just on the edge of Tropper Drive, but there was some concern with the maintenance having raised pylons or a separator there as far as handling snow and or leaf debris in the gutter. And so the intent was it to be an off-the-road multi-use trail, and so that's how it migrated that. I will say, though, that there's a section from Park Road for a short distance where I believe there's 3 or 4 travel lanes on Tropper Drive. In other words, the road's pretty wide as far as number of travel lanes, where the grass strip between the curb and the trail is minimal. And so in that area, we're putting a guide rail separator between the edge of the trail and the edge of the roadway. But that's only for 200 feet or something like that. And then the travel lanes dissipate and we're able to take the curb further into the street and then you don't really need the guide rail. You have something like a 5-foot wide shoulder, and then a 5 or 6 foot wide grass strip, and then the trail starts.
Okay, thanks.
I'm very slow on the unmute. Sorry. So the question is whether there are any other comments on this design for Dwayne, so that he can take those back and they can move forward with their public meeting. Seeing none.
I have one question, actually, quick.
Oh.
What's the surface of the 10-foot trail? Is it just classic black pavement, or what is it?
That's correct. Similar to other sections, it will be paved. So it'll be asphalt.
Asphalt. Okay. I'm wondering if they're ever thought about with the idea that they don't like the idea of a 10-foot asphalt, that there was ever a consideration to making that more interesting, whether it was asphalt and grass, in 2 lanes, or if it was really, really, really hard packed, some other material, maybe it was colored, something that you could keep the amount of space but make it more aesthetically appealing and not such a sort of blatant paving of the area.
Yeah, we'll revisit that. I mean, the fallback that we were looking at was going with just a narrower asphalt area, maybe 8 feet. But I was hesitant to do that because I have a feeling that once this section is built, of course, other sections as well, it's going to become much more popular than it is now. And I would hate to put in a trail that's too narrow right off the bat. We have another section that, in my opinion, is too narrow, phase 4 between Park and Memorial. It's 6 feet or something like that. But as the trail gets more heavily used, I think it's going to become too narrow. So I don't want to start off with a trail that's kind of substandard, but we'll see what they say, what the reaction is, and then go from there. And we did talk about landscaping buffers between the trail and their houses. Maybe it would screen it a little bit better, but we'll look at options and see what we can come up with.
Thanks.
I agree completely with the wider one, because you're going to have it's going to be multi-use. There's going to be people walking it with dogs and bikes, and that confluence, 10 feet it's almost the minimum.
Exactly. I agree.
Yeah. Add the strollers in too. Yeah.
Right.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I think because the meeting is going so long already, I'm going to kind of buzz by the other roadway projects, except to say that Dwayne has reassured me they are working with their consultant VHB on the road diet trial, and everyone is very aware of when the bridge work will be done, and that the desire is to immediately go to a road diet. At that point, Main Street Bridge is coming along. They're going to switch probably before the end of the year, right? Dwayne, switch to the other side.
Yes.
Okay. I'm just looking to see. I don't think, was there anything else big? Trout Brook Trail, the piece that we've been waiting to hear the news that the agreement has been signed. Is it signed by all parties at this point? No. Okay. So forget that. We're still waiting. And what the town is looking at, Dwayne assured me that as they look at the trail going north above Duffield, this was a question asked at the last meeting. Okay, how are you going to continue the trail along Trout Brook? It goes underneath Trout Brook Drive. What they're looking at is from Duffield north to doing something that is parallel to Trout Brook Drive and no longer parallel to Trout Brook itself, which seems like probably the most feasible way to address that. So they're looking at those things. That was something we were concerned about last time. Most people have probably seen the implementation of the new traffic calming diverters at Newport and 4 Mile. And I think it's really encouraging to see the town trying so many different things to see what might work when you have a problem that's really a neighborhood problem. If you block off one street, they might use another. Is there anything you want to report on that, Dwayne, as to what you're seeing or what you're thinking about how those are working?
Sure. I'll just say the semi-diverters are very effective. They're an excellent traffic or intersection safety tool. Everywhere we've tried them out, they've worked really well. I'm not saying that they're a great fit in all locations, but the ones that we've tried, they worked really well. And the people that live next to those intersections are very happy with them. People sometimes disregard them and drive the wrong way, cross them. They know who they are, and they shouldn't be doing it, but they do it anyway. But just to go back on a comment before, change is tough for some people. And so some people love them, some people hate them. And if you live near it, but you don't have a semi-diverter on your street, you're seeing some traffic pattern changes, and additional traffic and maybe speeding is not welcome. So some people are happy for their neighbor, but not necessarily happy for their street, if you will. But we're going to keep them out there. We're going to continue the trial through the winter, make a decision at the end of the winter. What I'm telling people is, based on the results I'm seeing so far, I don't see why we wouldn't make them permanent. But time will tell.
Okay, great. Couple other things. Everybody's seen the bike lanes on LaSalle. You've also seen the big concrete block because people are continuing to turn south onto LaSalle from Farmington, but I guess that's something they learned. One thing I was wondering, Dwayne, do you guys feed information to the Google feed? Like when you change a road, because people are probably being sent from Google the wrong direction if nobody's given them the update that it's one way.
That's interesting. I have not. I don't know if my other staff has. My guess is that they haven't. But I did recently get contacted by, I think it's Waze, with regards to the semi-diverters on 4 Mile and Newport. So they do get reports from somebody, and they do follow up on them. But that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, because it's really hard when somebody's being told by their GPS which way to go. They can't stand not to go that way.
Right.
I know I'd seen a couple comments come in on LaSalle. There was some concern with the extent of those and what do they really connect to. But I think one important thing about that is we're testing back in angle parking with bike lanes. And the reason a lot of times, generally people recommend that if you have angle parking, it's better to have back in angle parking with bike lanes, because when the cars are coming out of the space, they'll see a bike coming down. If they're going to pull into this space, they're more likely to have seen the bike already because they're on the road with the bike. So I don't know. I've seen a lot of people who can't seem to figure out how to back into the spaces, and a lot of people who must be making U-turns on the street to go in. But I think when the weather's better, we'll all have more of a chance to check out the bike lanes. I did talk to Dwayne about Farmington Avenue because that had come up at our meeting. Like, why is there a permanent change on LaSalle but not on Farmington? Dwayne, do you want to explain that?
Sure. It's not out of consideration, but there's a couple things that are working against it right now. And one is there's a MDC water main project that's about to start. They're looking to replace the water main on Farmington Ave from Walden down to Tropic Drive. They're splitting it into 2 phases, trying to finish the section between Walden and Main Street this winter, and then in the spring and summer continue on down to Tropic Drive. This is the last section of water main on Farmington Ave that was constructed in the 1870s on Farmington Ave. So I do not want to have a water main break there. So there's that. Then the gas company wants to do a gas main in that section as well. The other concern is that traffic volumes, I can't predict what traffic volumes are going to be like, both with respect to the North Main Street Road diet, Farmington Ave, and other areas once the pandemic is gone. But there still is a concern that we might have an increase in traffic on Farmington Ave. And my concern is it might spill into the big intersection for obvious reasons. So I'm not saying that we need to have 4 lanes on that section of Farmington Ave, but we may need to have 3 lanes. So that's still something that we're looking into. LaSalle Road, I think there's somewhat of a commitment to put out expanded outdoor dining, maybe in a permanent fashion, but we still need to figure that out. So it's definitely an easier fit on LaSalle Road. It's just so much wider and less vehicular traffic compared to Farmington Ave. Sandy, you're muted.
Hate when I do that. I just said Dwayne and I could talk forever about the roadway projects, but I think that we hit all the highlights and the things that that people had questions about last time. Next item on the agenda, planning projects. The only thing that I saw on the Planning and Zoning Commission agenda of interest was accessory dwelling units, that the town is considering making it easier for people to have accessory dwelling units on a single family parcel, which has benefits for bike ped, because the more density you have, the more accessible you are for bike ped. More people can live in the central areas that have better access. Okay, next item, survey. So I'll turn it over to Ken.
Yep, we have updated the survey to include a question regarding the bike routes, bike routes in the town, familiarity, and if people have used them. And there are 3 questions now regarding pedestrian and where people walk to, why they do it, and concerns if they are not walking. So I can send out a final link for people to look at, and then we can share that also with I don't know if Dwayne has seen it yet, and Todd, confirm they can see it, and hopefully we can get it out. And that'll serve a little bit for some of the variety of ongoing work we're doing, but just also an inventory overall of perceptions in the town on bicycling and walking conditions.
That's great. Yeah, if you send me the link, Ken, I'll send it to the commission and to Dwayne and Todd.
Okay, that same link should work, Sandy, that I sent you earlier today.
Oh, okay.
There you have it.
I have the link. All right. If you don't see it go out, remind me. I'll try to do that right away. All right, next item was parking in bike lanes, which we talked about already, that I had talked to Lieutenant Judah. And there might have been some lack of awareness, but they are aware of the interest in that being enforced. And they did say, if we see something, we should let them know. The final.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Sorry. This may fall into new business, but Paul, Denise, and David Beers, we got together on just I don't know if it's Vimeo, WebEx, or wherever I see someone on camera at this point. But we got together and talked about enforcement, kind of as a subcommittee, looking into that. How we can look at this as part of the every update for infrastructure and bike safety also needs to be complemented by the enforcement to protect those rights for pedestrians and cyclists. So just to give awareness that David Resident is spearheading that project, and then Denise and Paul and I are working with as a group. So we hope to have something presented to the commission to add to the agenda to discuss our findings and results.
Great. Thank you for taking the bull by the horns there.
And Paul, Denise, did I miss anything? I just want to make sure.
You're good.
Thank you for all of you doing that.
Paul, he does talk a lot on that meeting, so
Okay, under new business, I forgot to put officer elections, but it would be good if we did officer nominations at this point. If we I'm just reading the chat about utility patches, which surprised me. I didn't know we had talked about it. So, okay. So Daniel has expressed an interest in becoming chair of the commission. And he and I talked, and I think he's ready for this awesome responsibility. And what we thought is if we do nominations this month and then elections next month, he and I can be sort of partners getting the next month's meeting set up. He'll know who to contact in the town, all that, and it will be a very smooth transition. The big challenge is that when Daniel becomes chair, he will no longer be secretary. And so we need someone to take on the secretary job. And I see Denise speaking.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I did want to say that I was expressing interest in the secretary position. I attend almost all the meetings. I very rarely miss, and I do take my own notes. So I think I could take it on.
Oh my gosh! Excellent, excellent.
Here.
I'd like to move to nominate. If someone would second that.
Okay, so you're moving the slate. Who would like to second the slate?
I will second, third, fourth, and fifth it.
Okay, Paul and Ken for the slate.
Can we vote? Should we vote now in case somebody backs out?
Yeah, that's a good idea. I don't know. Now Matt is gone. Dwayne, now you're our town expert, so you can tell me. Do you think we can vote now, or did we have to advertise that we were voting on officers?
I am the wrong person to ask, but I'm guessing it's the latter. You probably had to advertise it, but
Yeah.
if there's any harm in doing it now, maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I'm not sure.
Well, we could take the vote now, and then we could take another vote in January just to, make sure. What do you think?
You could phrase it that way.
This is Daniel. Sorry. So real quick, I would like to put my hat in for the nomination for taking over for Sandy and, prior Scott Franklin and the legacy of Mary Ellen as well. And, going into 2021, Sandy and I talked about, as a group, how we operate and some things that I can introduce differently. I think one thing I would like to do in 2021 is, just as a group, get better foundational understanding for current policies and where they stand. That way, as we make directions, we have a shared knowledge on that. I would like to get out to a park once a month with anybody who's around, just so we can offer that opportunity for residents to join us at the park and just talk about what their concerns are. And then work more on the Google Share Drive or a shared base of knowledge as a team, so we can look at everything that's not on the agenda, but focus those goals and work with Dwayne and the town on a lot of these great projects. So I'm one person and I'm very limited in my skills, but definitely I think this group and the knowledge and expertise is so vast and so broad. I just look to continue working with you if the nomination is voted. So thank you. Just want to put that piece out there.
Thank you, Daniel, for that wonderful précis of what we're going to have. I think it's fine if you want to vote Sandy now, but I think when it comes to voting for officers, we're probably better to just abide by Robert's rules, which is to make sure it's posted on an agenda 5 days before a meeting. I'd hate to someone say, well, it's an insider group. They don't even really hold elections. I think it just would be, I'm going to vote 6 times. I'm going to use all my Trump votes for both of you, Denise and and Daniel. But I think just there's no reason we have to rush this, right? I mean, practice, Daniel can start teaching over and Denise can become secretary next time. But I just think we'd be better just to do it above board.
Okay, and we could have the first item on the agenda at the next meeting.
Yes.
Could be the election, and then they could take over from that point. So why don't we do that? We have one more item of business, and that is the schedule of meetings for next year.
Just to talk about Robert's rules real quick, if there's only one person nominated, they can get elected by acclamation. You don't have to have a vote.
Oh my.
And can you do that without having listed nomination and election on your agenda? That's what we're thinking is the issue.
I believe so.
No.
No, I don't think so.
No, are you sure? Nominations don't need a second. They come from the floor, and as long as only one person is nominated, they get elected by acclamation. So I don't think there's ever a vote because no one else has ever been nominated.
But does everybody know nominations were in play without having an announcement to the public?
Right.
Right.
I don't want any voter fraud concerns coming to 2021 on my calendar.
This is when we start talking about Robert's rules, let's move to another topic, which is the schedule of meetings for next year. And that is in your packet. I think it's the last page. I'm just looking to see. October is the only meeting that we had to change, and I just changed it to the Tuesday, the next day. Otherwise, it's always the second Monday as we have been meeting.
I move we accept the schedule as presented.
Is there a second?
I have a quick question. I'm so sorry.
Why don't we get a second and get it on the floor first?
Okay, super.
Okay, who seconded?
Ryan?
Okay. Okay, questions? Colin?
So I hate that we're saying it's a WebEx for the rest of the year, and I guess we could say that. It'd be great if it was aspirationally in person. It's more of the optics of it. It sort of says this is what we're going to do for another year, and not be in person. But I'll just make that as a statement. I don't think it changes the approval of the date.
Yeah, I think that was the direction I got from the town, that for the foreseeable future, we were going to be virtual. And hopefully that won't be the whole 12 months. Okay, so is there any objection to the schedule rather than taking a vote? Can we see if there's any objection? Hearing no objection, I will send that schedule into the town. It will be official. Any staff reports that we haven't heard yet?
Yeah, Sandy, I have a couple things real quick. First thing is you were talking about planning matters. I did talk to Todd Dumais, the town planner, before this meeting, and he indicated that there's going to be some discussions regarding transit-oriented development coming with the new year. So he didn't have anything official or any details. I don't even think there's been anything advertised yet, but he thought it would be worthwhile just to mention it. He wanted to, or anybody wants to check in with him. I think January is a target to start discussion. And then the second thing is I just wanted to point out that we have been adding information to the engineering webpage, Town of West Hartford engineering webpage pertaining to the North Main Street Road Diet. And so our consultant VHB has been providing us information as they go through the study. So I would encourage everybody to look at the webpage from time to time and just get updates that way. And then there's also a project email. If you have any questions and you want to send them in, town staff has access to the email as well as our consultant. Thank you.
Dwayne, that's great to hear that. Any report from Bike West Hartford?
Just on behalf of Bike West Hartford, I want to say how excited Bike West Hartford is to hear the discussion that we started the meeting with, the discussion that I've been having with anybody that would listen to me for the past 10 years. So I'm super excited about that. And the other thing is the desire of Bike West Hartford to do something in memorial for Mary Ellen Thibodeau If anybody has any ideas or wants to help with that, please contact me at, you could do Ethan at mikewesthartford.org, because I would like to talk to ASD and talk about a memorial, a bench or something like that, maybe perhaps at ASD, if they would allow that on Main Street, along North Main Street, where Mary Ellen walked every day. That's it.
That's a great idea, Ethan. Benches always get forgotten when we're thinking about, accommodations for pedestrians. How about cycling without age? Dan, anything?
Yeah, first of all, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to everybody. Needless to say, we're stymied with cycling without age. We have not done a blessed thing. The rickshaw is at Hughes, and the trailer's in my backyard, and that's where we stand. Hopefully, as the year progresses, 2021 progresses, we will be able to get back out.
Does anybody have anything else before we close the meeting? All right. Well, I want to thank everybody. Dwayne, thank you for staying for the whole meeting. It was really useful to have you here. And happy holidays to everyone. See you in the new year.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Okay, bye-bye.